Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Tradesman Experience. This is the podcast built by tradesmen for tradesmen. My name is Josh, and in the virtual studios is of course, the talent, Mr. Nate Newton. Nate, 37 minutes into getting this show on the road. How are you, sir?
I didn't have to do shit, so I just watched both of you struggle for half an hour, and it was fucking great.
Damn. I wish you looked good doing it, but you're just sitting there. But
Yeah.
Jim and I was on.
Yeah,
She was trying to help us. Much
Where the fuck she's at
appreciated.
now. Probably biting somebody in the dick.
Just like her dad. Oh, man. So anyway, here's first of all, this is not a welding podcast. I just want to be clear before I introduce our next guest. We're turning back the clock a little bit to FabTech up in Chicago. And through several different events, we got to meet Kevin Johnson, the owner of Welding Business Owners Podcast, but also owner of JMW Specialty Welding and Fabrication. And I had the privilege of spending hours with this guy after the CWA event. And immediately I knew, A, I liked him, and two, I wanted to have him on here to share his story. So, Kevin, I hope that introduction pays you some credit that's due. Welcome to the show, man.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. That's perfect.
Nailed it. Mic drop. It's over. That's all I need to know.
All right, let's go home.
Start drinking.
Man, we got a lot of stuff to unpack, a lot of things that I'm excited to hear about. But to just kick us off, tell us who you are.
So I'm Kevin Johnson, owner of JMW Specialty Welding Fabrication. Everybody asks what the specialty welding is, and it really, long story short, I was going to do aerospace stuff, but now we do stairs and rails. So, kind of next to each other, not a far jump at all. But yeah, so
same exact certifications and everything.
Exactly. Yeah, so I started about 8 years ago full time. Our crew fluctuates from anywhere from 4 to 6, sometimes 7, 8 people. We, like I said, we do a lot of stairs and rails. A couple years ago, about 3 years ago, I decided to jump into the podcast space because really I was going to FabTech, and there's only so much time at FabTech when you can talk to people. And I always felt like I never got enough out of the conversations. I never got to talk to everybody I wanted to. So I decided to, make it legit and make it sound like, I had something else going on, and just so I can talk to these people who I didn't get to at FabTech. So I started the podcast, and now what we do is I invite people on, we talk shop for a couple hours, and I release an episode every week-ish, somewhere around there. My tagline is our podcasts are late, but our bids are on time. Because a lot of times my podcast is late. So, did that. And then, recently we started up the Fabricator Olympics. Last month, October 7th was our first annual Fabricator Olympics. And,
let's dive into that. I'm excited to hear, like where the idea came from, what you had to do to create it, and what was it like?
So where the idea came from was, I don't know, probably about over a year ago. My wife and I always throw, big parties, and that's kind of our thing. And I thought it'd be really like for my birthday party. She's like, "What do you want to do for your birthday?" I'm like, "You know what? I want to have a bunch of my fabricator friends over. I just want to build stuff in the shop. I think it'd be cool to have a little competition, this and that. We have a spider crane. So I'm like, let's hang people from the spider crane upside down and do all this wild and crazy stuff." And, that idea got shot down pretty quick. And then it kind of morphed into like, well, instead of doing it welding, like there's a bunch of different welding competitions out there. And in our shop, we're really passionate about the fabrication side of things because 90% of what we do is fabrication and 10% is welding. So, and honestly, it's hard for us to find good welders and good fabricators. We can find good welders. Fabricators they're a tough thing to hire for. So that's really where our passion was, and it kind of grew into something a little bit bigger than I thought it was going to be. it kind of just snowballed. We have a connection with Lincoln Electric Retail and Harris Products. We do some of their alpha and beta testing on the new machines that are out, and we make some of their social media content, whatever, videos and pictures and all that good stuff. And I proposed the idea to them. I was like, hey, we're gonna throw this event. Would you guys like to be the sponsor of it? We've got a 3-year relationship going on already. I think this would be right up your alley. And it's something that nobody else does. Like Skills USA, they have a little bit of fabrication in there, but it's more about putting the structure together and your pressure testing and there's a lot of welding involved. Um our competition was there was a little bit of welding. It was mainly fabrication. So we had 6 challenges with five, 6 challenges, and everybody was scored on time and accuracy. Whatever welding that there was to that, your welds were not graded at all. I don't care. I'm okay with, as a business owner, I am really okay with average welds. If you can make your welds look better and still hit your time, that's great. But I kind of modeled this competition after what I want and what I want to see in my shop. And I want to see somebody who can do it fast, who can do it accurate, who can make it look half decent. Because if your welds are beautiful and it takes you 3 hours to build a whatever, that doesn't do me any good. You know what I mean? Like, you don't further the business along. You don't help uh, anybody else in the shop by taking too long. So, as much as I do appreciate beautiful stacks of dimes, I appreciate efficiency and guys who their mind works in a way that they can just see it and they can build it and they know how to get it done. You know what I mean? So that's kind of what the competition reflected. And yeah, so that was October 7th. We had we purposely kept it small because it was hosted at our shop. We don't have a ton of parking at our shop. So I was trying to keep it to like 100, 150 people. And we got just over 100 people there. We had spots for 30 competitors. We had 27 sign up. It's funny because I felt like everybody was a little bit intimidated because nobody knew what the Fabricator Olympics was. So I felt like I had to coach everybody, and they're like, no, 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 no. I had people like messaging me, I want to do it, but I'm not very good at TIG welding, or like I'm terrible with stick vertical. I'm like, no, 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 guys, that's not what it is. It's a
Mhm.
it's a fabrication competition. And
Well,
when I
it was
explained it to them
pretty in the dark, right? Like, I mean,
purposely,
you didn't give out much information. So I was looking at it like, I'm like, dude, I'll do it next year, but I don't know about jumping into it this year, like,
yes,
because that is intimidating, right? When you don't know what it is, and it's like, oh, you need to do a nuclear certification with fucking chromo or something. You're like, I've never seen that before in my life.
yep,
So, but that I appreciate that about it, but I think your turnout next year is gonna be fucking nuts
I
because
think so
of
too.
you've kind of broken the seal on it, right?
Exactly, and so it was really tough because I couldn't tell people what we were doing because I wanted good I wanted good fabricators, not good practicers.
Mhm,
So, like, even my foreman in my shop and everybody in my shop, nobody knew what we were doing. Like 2 days before the competition, I had them cutting things that they didn't understand what was gonna happen with that stuff,
mhm,
because I didn't wanna put it out there. So, with that, yeah, it's now that we have the first year under our belt, and we have the content and people kinda understand what it is, everybody's like, "Oh my gosh, that's amazing. This is really up my alley." So, I'm gonna have to switch it up next year. We are in talks with, a local school to actually host it there because I think the turnout's gonna be a lot more.
mhm,
For the 100 people that we had, I say it was a concentrated 100.
mhm,
We had guys who drove down from like, we're in, Eastern Pennsylvania, like an hour north of Philly. We had guys come down from, like, Maine, Rhode Island, up from Virginia. I had a guy, him and his wife flew up from North Carolina. Guy from
mm.
Ohio came out. So, like, we had 27 people, but 27 competitors, but I would say 6 of them travel more than 5 hours to get there to compete in this.
Shit.
Yeah.
That's impressive. Well, so one aspect of that competition that I thoroughly enjoyed was watching to see how long somebody could use a zip cut for.
Oh, man.
Dude,
So
that's such a fucking killer. Like, dude, I mean, the amount of zip cuts we go through in our shop, right? It's staggering. But to see a dude go more than 30 minutes with one zip cut, I watch guys barrel through those things in 45 seconds.
I think he actually ended
Yes,
up going
Josh.
like 47 minutes on one wheel.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Talk about letting the tool do the work, right?
Right? You know, it was actually a problem because I had anticipated the competitions to last about an hour and a half. So we had 6 competitions and we would run 2 at a time. That way we had enough judges and then everybody would, when you're done with this one, your number got called and you went to the next one. And it took like 3.5 hours to get through the cut wheel competition because people were just camping out on just, I think the winner, he got 56. So we had 3/4 inch solid round bar. And you get one wheel, everybody gets a brand new wheel. Lincoln really stepped up and they gave us all the welders, they gave us all the grinders, and like they gave us so much, like basically the entire everything we had in the competition was theirs. And they stepped up huge. So they gave us all the cutoff wheels and brand new grinders. We had a 3/4 inch solid steel round bar, and however many slices you could get out of that. The winner got 56 slices out of one wheel on that.
God damn. I do.
Yeah.
I just want to play that on repeat in my shop for all of our crew members, like, hey, that's what's possible,
Yep. So
That-
I
that's
think
nuts.
he got 56 in like under 30 minutes, I believe. So next time we're gonna have to put a time limit on it.
Hmm.
So the other competitions, let me think. We did one. We had 5/16 round bar, and you had to make an 8x8 square box. Every 16th of an inch out of tolerance and squareness, you got a point. And whoever had the lowest amount of points won, because that theoretically you're square and you're perfect 2 dimension. But the caveat was you couldn't use a tape measure. You had to do it by eye.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
Matt, my business partner, Matt, would be the fucking crown jewel of that competition. we call him the gazer beam because that dude can see a 16th out at 40 feet. Like he's just
Yeah.
yeah. But that's that. Were they allowed to use squares or
Nope.
no? They just had to eyeball the whole thing.
Yeah, you had to eyeball the whole thing.
Holy fuck. I would have failed that miserably.
Yeah. So as some people did, some people thought the pieces of bar that we got were already cut to, certain lengths, and they could just all they had to do was cut it evenly and make it square. You had 6 extra inches on the actual bar that you had, so you had to actually see where 8 inches was. So it was really interesting to see how people figured out where, like, the 8 inches on it. And so there was that. There was so we had 1 inch flat bar, and whoever could drill a 1/2 inch hole through 1 inch flat bar the fastest won. And that was strictly on time. So you could do pilot holes, you could do whatever. So everybody got a brand new drill bit set from 1/16 up to 1/2 inch. And whatever pilot bit you wanted to use, you got to use it. That was where the skill came in, where so that you had to know what you could do. Man, you should have seen some people kill these drill bits. There was a guy 20 minutes, just like it just smoke everywhere. The drill smoking, his bits smoking, he's just dumping oil everywhere. Terrible.
I mean, trust me. I have employees. I know exactly what that looks like. So, yeah.
One of the things in our shop is everybody has to have their own set of drill bits, because I learned really early on that you have to have your own drill bits, because I'm like, if you don't know how to use drill bits, you can wipe out an entire set of drill bits in like a day, really.
Yeah. Well, and so I was a pipeline welder for 12 years, and the the responsibility that came along with that was I had to have my own rig. I had to have all my own tools, all my own equipment. And it really fostered this idea of treating your tools nicely. And then all of a sudden you get employees and they don't give a flying fuck
Yeah.
about any of your tools. I've watched dudes knock over fucking mag drills off of the table and just be like, oops, and just pick it up and put it back on the table. And I'm like, man, that's not, you just dropped it on the annular cutter too, like onto the bit. And it's like, you get up to a 2-inch bit on a mag drill.
Yeah.
That's a $250 bit,
Yeah.
There's like, oh shit, sorry, bro. Like, is that coming out of your check or what are we doing here? Like,
Yeah.
so, but that really fostered this idea of maintaining equipment, buying high quality shit.
Yep.
And we have opportunities for our guys to rig up, and we've had five guys rig up completely. We don't have any right now, but as they rigged up, it's crazy to watch how much better our tools get treated once they rig up. They start treating the stuff in the shop better, and it takes that. It takes you being responsible for your own shit in order to facilitate that.
Yeah, it's funny because now that we're we thinned out a few guys, and we're selling one truck. So we had 2 road rigs. One of them was like full decked out and the other was like halfway kind of decked out, and that was like the leftover tools from the shop, and just enough for you to get by. And we have a tool list that you have to have, and we give them a tool allowance. And if you don't have it, we'll buy it for you and take it out of your tool allowance just so that you have the tools. Well, we're selling the one truck, and I took all the tools out of there, and to be honest with you, I'm putting the good ones in my toolbox and I'm throwing the rest out because I want people to have their own tools. Because exactly what you said, if you have your own tools, you respect them differently, and then you respect those tools differently, then you respect all the other tools differently. So it's kind of a trickle down effect. Because we've had a lot of problems like that too. And I think the best way to do it is to, if you come on board and you don't have, and we have to drop $800 on you tooling up in order to have this job, that's fine. Well, we'll either take it out like partially out of your check and partially out of your tool allowance. Because, I want everybody to keep sharp drill bits. Like in our handbook, it says you must keep an entire drill index up to 1/2 inch and replace them or sharpen them when they're not, when they're dull. And, some people will buy like the cheap $20 Harbor Freight drill index. I'm like, guys, come on. Like, this is not like, I want you to have risk. Like, I understand, you're straight out of school. You don't have a whole lot of money. Let me just buy you the $100 one and just take care of them, because I want you to, because, they're not going to take care of that $20 set. They're going to get dull, and they're going to go in our inventory and pull the ones that are ours. And then the 1/4 inch bit that they have is never like, they're never going to have a sharp 1/4 inch bit ever,
Right. Well,
So-
because we go through like Kimball Midwest, our good buddy Mike Baum, he's our outside sales rep, and he comes in and it's that full index that goes every 16th of an inch is what and we'll go put them out in the shop. They're $250 for these things. They're step up bits, so they're fucking expensive, and we go put it out in the shop, and I always buy like 3 or 4 of them at a time, and I hide the rest of them. But no joke, I put one out there, and 4 days later, I go out and there's 7 missing bits in there, and I'm like, "Hey, where the fuck are the bits at?" "Oh, they broke." I'm like, "Were you gonna tell me?" "Well, I don't know. I mean, it wasn't that big of a deal." And I'm like, "Well, what are you gonna do when you need a 1/4 inch bit?" "Well, I just come ask you." "Oh, when you need it, you're gonna come ask me instead of getting out in front of it so I can go order one." That's how it's gonna go, And so it's that weird dynamic when your work is dependent upon the tools that you have, and you're the one that provides them. You're like, oh shit, I broke that today. I better hit Home Depot on the way home.
Yep.
And it's very different than a lot of other places that I watch operate, and then we actually just hired a shop steward, Sam, who we hired her on a couple months ago. She came in. She's super organized. Shows up with her own Milwaukee triple stack box. She takes it in and out of her truck every day. She has all of her tools are labeled. Has her own color of spray paint on them, and she's doing this every day. We see all of her stuff super organized. We're like, hey, we'll give you a substantial compensation uh, increase if you take over our shop for us. And she's like, "Oh, thank God! Like, I am so tired of working in here because this place is a fucking disaster." And I'm like, so like, but put it in the hands of somebody that is capable and
Mhm.
has the ability to do it and is organized and wants to take it on.
Sure.
And I told her, I was like, "Look, this isn't just us giving you the responsibility. You have authority with this too. If people come in here out of the field and they just start dumping shit in the shop, light them the fuck up.
Yep.
And if they give you any shit for it, you come tell us and we'll handle it."
Yep.
So, I mean, and I don't think people understand that you can't just leave it to everybody to do the right thing when it comes to your tools.
Mhm.
And we thought that for a long time. And then we realized how much we fucked up by doing that.
Yep. So they have to buy their own tools now, but yeah, you'd be surprised at for the competition how many people like just smoked their drill bits. It was actually pretty comical how bad a lot of people were. But then some people were great. They just boom knocked it right out. Like I don't know, under under a minute. They put a hole in there. I was like, all right, you guys actually know what you're doing.
Right.
So
What was the grand prize for the Fabricator Olympics?
So the grand prize was a brand new Lincoln 180i multi-process machine that Lincoln donated, and we put $1,000 cash on top of it. So, um, you know, like I knew this was going to be an issue, so I backed I came up with the judging schedule of like how to judge all the competitions, and I had my mentor, I had Jason Becker from the Art Junkies podcast, and I had a local tech school teacher be the judges for this whole thing because my foreman won first place. So I I had to I had to completely separate myself, so there was no bias there. But yeah, he won the welder, and it's actually still in our shop, just kind of rolling around because he won't take it home because he's a Miller guy. But
uh,
so yeah, it was great, man. It was a really good turnout. Some of the other competitions were a lot of fun, and we had a couple of vendors there. We had amazing food, and I think next year we're in talks with a couple other sponsors, energy drinks and stuff like that. And it's gonna be a really good time. I think it's gonna be a really good turnout next year. It was really cool to see a lot of the trade school kids come out to show them what because if you're in school, you do pad welds and you do verticals and you do some practice pipes, but it's the skills that you don't learn in tech school or in your trade school that you're able to see like, oh, this really matters in the end.
mhm.
Especially the final competition was actually a modification of what we do for our hiring test. So you had 4 pieces of 2-inch square tubing, 16 gauge, like real thin, and they were cut to, I don't know, 17, 18 inches long. You had to make a 15 by 15 square box, miter all 4 corners, and then you had to make a leg out of 2-inch square tube that went on whatever corner you wanted, but it had to be vertical and had to be square both ways, and then that also had to be 15 inches. So that was our final competition, and some people. I think Dylan got it in like 19 minutes. Also, you had to fully weld it around, and then you did you? No, you didn't have to blend your welds. In our weld test, we have you sand down all 4 corners like it would be a square tube handrail because I want to see how your blending is. For that one, you didn't have to do that. It was just straight up welding. Um, and then every 16th of an inch you were out of dimension and square, it added like I think it was like 10. It was written down. It's like 10 or 15 seconds. And I think the closest there was Dylan was 19 minutes. Jared was 27, and then the other three guys were in the 30, 40, and one guy finished in like 58 minutes. And so yeah, and now that I give that away, I'm gonna have to change it up for next year. But it's gonna be a little bit more complicated next year. But yeah, so that's kind of what the Fabricator Olympics was. It was really more of a showcase for fabricators guys and girls who have been in the industry and can put stuff together, cut it, and put it together accurately in a specific time frame.
That's for the kids that came in to check that out, like the plethora of tips and tricks that you can pick up on watching these guys compete against one another on how to do things quickly, effectively, efficiently. Like what a leg up for those kids, and it really does show them that because we run into that all the time too with our hiring process. Is people are like, oh, I'm a good welder. And I'm like, okay, cool. We do the same thing. They have to build it's a 10 by 10 square box out of I think it's 2 by 2 by 120 wall, and then they have to blend all their corners down. And their welds look great, and then let them blend something, and they're blending with a fucking grinding wheel. You're like, hey, what are you doing? But you can tell they've never fabricated. They've welded, and finding out what people's capabilities are on that fabrication side, God, is that humbling for them. To realize how much they don't fucking know when it comes to fabrication.
Yeah, and it's good, and well, I mean, it's good because it helps weed them out. But we've got guys coming in. We just had a guy come in. He had a really impressive resume. He's owned his own business. He didn't like it. He does really precise work. He has AutoCAD experience. Just he was probably in his late 40s, early 50s. I'm like, this is the guy we need. He's got a lot of experience. He went to go build that box, man. It was like he was building a rocket ship. Like he would disassemble it, sand a little bit, and then put it all back together and be off, and then disassemble the whole thing and put it back together. I'm like, dude, like I understand, get it, there has to be that balance of make it nice and perfect, but we also have to hit our time on this too. You know what I mean? Like really, it should take 45 minutes to an hour. Like if you're doing it at a sustainable pace and you're just, like in a shop environment, even an hour and a half, because, you've got the jitters that where, you're interviewing, you're a little bit nervous, you're overthinking things, whatever. I tell people to tack it all together before they weld it so I can see their cuts and how it's tacked together. Then I can see, if it's perfectly fit. And it maybe took you an hour and a half, but it's perfectly fit. I can definitely work with that. If you've got these big giant gaps and you're at a 1 hour and you're gonna have to fill, 3/16 of an inch gap on 16 gauge material, like that's gonna just be a disaster.
That's a disaster. Yeah.
So I want to see how they do it, put it together, and then weld it up, and then I want to see your finishing process on top of that. So it really weeds it out, man. And the guys, it's funny, even the guys who bomb it, like we have a guy, Chris, in our shop, man. Chris is like, he's just the guy to get it done. He bombed his test. We hired him straight out of school and he did a pretty terrible job. I'm not going to lie. Like he knows it. We all know it. It's not like I'm talking smack on him, but he's humble. And he's really eager to learn. He takes directions really well. And he was just a genuinely good, nice guy. Man, him and Dylan are killing it in there. Because you know what? He's not a class A fabricator, but he's getting there. Like this, he's been with us for about a year. And his skill from where he came from not zero, but at really low, he's really excelled. So I don't think the box is a make or break for hiring with us. It's more of a let's see where your skills and strengths are at, and we'll take it and we'll evaluate it from there. Because sometimes we're hiring for a shop guy, and we make them cut that with a cutoff wheel. I give them a grinder, cutoff wheel, a flap wheel, a square, a piece of soapstone, um, and the welder. If they need PPE, if they don't come in with PPE, we give them PPE. Because especially for road work, you don't have a chop saw out there in the field. We're not packing up a chop saw to put on the truck so that you can make square cuts. I want to see what you can do.
Mhm.
Now, granted, if you're going to be in the shop, if we're hiring you specifically for the shop, and your cuts aren't that straight, all right, we'll work on that because most of the time you're gonna be using a chop saw anyway. So it's not really a make or break. It's really to see where you're at, but we do weigh pretty heavily on it depending on the job.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, most of our rigs are equipped with chop saws personally, but it's the same thing though. If the guy's got to know how to use a portaband or something, you
Hmm.
can actually do some pretty impressive shit with a portaband and a grinder.
Heck yeah.
And that's so much shit has been automated these days that the days of the truly skilled individual, I
Mhm.
think they're
Skilled fabricator.
yeah, they're gone. They're kind of going to the wayside, that because they don't need to do it, you
Hmm.
know. And I think that the future is going to be beholden to those that are capable of doing things like you're discussing right now.
I, I I think it's both. I think there's room for both because of the automation is not going away, so you need to embrace it no matter what that looks like in your shop. I think automation, everybody says it's going to take away jobs. I don't think it's going to take away jobs, more as it's going to make people be more efficient with the jobs that they do. But the guys who do get that fabrication side of things, those are like the guys you put on the road where they can improvise, where they are problem solvers, where they can make it happen when they don't have those tools. So I think that the guys who I want to say in quotes like they get it when it comes to fabrication, those are the guys who you can pay them 5, $8 an hour more to put them on the road because they can do it by hand rather than need it done in the shop. But I think there is also going to be there. I think there really is value in learning that new production work. Like one of the things that we're working towards is a plasma tubing processor. The JD Squared, Bentech Dragon, EMI, something like that, where you draw it out and you just have somebody stick the pipe in and it just spits out post, it spits out handrail. It's just all around amazing. There is a value to the guys who understand that. Now, what do I value more? I don't know. It depends on the job that you're hired for. I do need that guy or I will need that guy who knows that machine inside and out, who can draw it. But you can't like you put him out in the field to fix an excavator bucket. He's gonna be out there for a week failing miserably. He's not gonna know how to do that. So I do respect both sides of it. Um, you know, coming as a guy who quote unquote gets it, I find myself tending more to respect that just because it is like the old timer trade, like, and it's what I know and what I understand. So I think I can see both sides of it. But but yeah, I really respect the guys who get it, who understand it, and as long as you have a good attitude, man, I'll hire that any day. You
Mhm.
know.
I mean, a good attitude takes you so fucking far in these industries. I mean, because we've dealt with that, a lot. Where especially these younger kids, they haven't really experienced much. They don't know what the markets look like, and then they come in, and somebody's finally holding them accountable for once in their life, and uh, if they have the balls to take that constructively, they're gonna do great. But you can always see the little clicks start to form of
Mhm.
people bitching and complaining with each other, and fucking bro, what they don't understand, I've come to realize, and this is even with the older generations too, there's a huge difference between working hard and struggling all day.
Mm, yep.
That gets convoluted a lot. They're like, dude, I fucking worked my ass off all day. And it's like, no, you struggled all day. That's not hard work. That's just struggling,
Very
you
good
know?
point.
And that trying to present that differentiation with people that, they're like, well, dude, I'm fucking exhausted. Like, yeah, because you suck at what you're doing. Let me show you some ways to not suck, that's a hard point to get across.
Yeah.
Kevin, how do you balance the efficiency and the standard? Something you said earlier, that you don't hound on people for stacking dimes. You care about efficiency and quality, but the welds don't have to be perfect. How do you balance and manage that standard?
I it comes down to our work orders. It comes to communicating what the job is and what the standards are. On our work orders, we have a finishing. It says what process. So back it up a little bit. That's been a long struggle for me, because I just think that everybody else understands what's going on in my head,
Hmm.
and I need to communicate that.
Sounds like a leader.
Right? I need to communicate that well to everybody else. So, one of the first things we did was making up a work order for the shop. Rather than just scribbling down on a piece of white paper and just kinda expecting them to know, I put in there how many hours I bid the job for. We've actually broken that out a little bit more into, like, this and that, how many hours we have for cutting, to, like, processing, fabrication. This is for packaging and delivery. This is for media blasting and powder coating. So I've broken that out. But the standards for the welding and even the finishing is, we have 1, 2, 3, and 4. I tell you, I say what process I want it done: MIG, TIG, stick, whatever. And it's there's a I had to pull it up. It's 1 through 4. 1 is like grind it down perfectly, no visible welds, like perfectly smooth. 4 is like leave it as is, don't even touch like if you have any spatter, don't even touch the spatter because it's going in the ground. Nobody's ever gonna see it. So I think that is how I have. And granted, I fall short of that standard sometimes. Even when I do make a work order, sometimes I just don't fill that out because I just feel like it's self-explanatory. And even though it needs to be done, that is my job. My job is to fill out that work order to completion so that everybody knows what is in my mind and how it should be done. These are the hours I expect it to be done in. This is the way I want the welds ground down and the finish, and this is the technique I want done, and this is the media blasting material that I want you to use. This is where we're going to take it for powder coating or finishing. And here's the date I made the work order. Here's the date I need it to be, ready to install. Here's the site address. And that's been a work in progress for a long time. And with having Dylan on board as the foreman, he's really, me and him, the communication with me and him is pretty tight. So even the stuff that I drop the ball on, he knows and he gets and he understands, but he still holds me accountable a decent amount of time. He's like, you know, even for things where I know he knows, he's just coming to ask me to be like, "Hey, you forgot this." I'm like, "Touche, man. I got you. I appreciate you holding me accountable, even when it is annoying I'm doing something else."
Uh,
I like that you have. I mean, I could spend an hour just talking about that system,
Mhm.
but what I do like is that you're setting clear expectations, because one of the mistakes that can happen, and I think this is personality based, is you can get lost in perfection and you lose the process.
Yeah.
And when you have to do rework or rebuild, because I call them operating tolerances. All right. So when your operating tolerance is perfection, you never get there.
Mhm.
You never accomplish it. And then when there are no clear operating tolerances, like you're talking about, you've got this 1 through 4. You've got all of these processes broken down throughout the steps of the fabrication. It just it lays out a clear roadmap for people. And what I also like about it is you're you're giving people the roadmap, but you're still not driving for them.
Mhm.
And that's a mistake that a lot of leaders make, is they want to give them the roadmap, and they want a hand on the steering wheel. And the more information, and the you have to make it very elementary. And I don't use the word elementary to offend anyone's intelligence. You have to make it elementary, because if you don't start at that basic fundamental level of implementation and transfer of information and communication and accountability that you're talking about, you can't grow them.
Yeah.
So Dylan can look at that, and you can forget something, and he already knows how to interpret the rest of the information to conclude what it is that you want, but he's still going to come back to you and be like, "Hey, what did you want here?"
Mhm.
And that is fucking beautiful,
Yeah.
because what that really tells me is now you have built an individual that is embracing the system. They understand the system, they're representing the system, but they're not allowing the system to fall away. And so they're still holding the standard, is ultimately what I'm getting to, right? This
Yeah.
big fucking roundabout that I'm talking here. But I wish people understood more how effective those elementary processes and procedures and transfer of information, and how not just elementary but effective, right? So when I teach people about systems, not just developing a system, but when I teach people about systems, it has to check 3 boxes. It has to be effective, it has to be efficient, and it has to be easy, the 3 E's. But it has to be easy to use, easy to access, and easy to communicate.
Yep.
If you implement the 3 E's in a system, you have exactly what you're talking about. And I think the asterisk for the 4th E is evolution, right? You have to allow the system to evolve.
Yeah.
But so I love that you are able to get your ego out of the way and know that every weld, every piece doesn't have to be perfect, but it's job sensitive, not ego sensitive.
Mhm. Absolutely. And it's funny you say that the asterisk of the evolution thing, because the more the longer I've been in business, and the more that Dylan jumps on board with these processes, the more we realize, like, this is what makes a company more than you owning a job with some helpers. I
Ah, yep.
Oh, it's so great.
I feel like that was my, for the longest time, it was, I feel like it was the Kevin show with a bunch of helpers. And then I realized, I mean, I, I, I love what I do, and I love everything about this business. I need to empower people, but I found myself frustrated because of the expectations that I had in my head, but I didn't communicate. And even when I did do it, it seemed like I was trying to be a dictator. And like, when I first started telling people, um, like I would tell everybody on the team, I'm like, this is when we first did these work orders, I would say, these are the hours we have to do it. And you just see their face drop. And it's like, okay, like, I'm not doing this to nitpick you. I'm not doing this because like when we first started out, we're like, we don't want to be like corporate. We don't want to have all these rules and like these processes. Like, everybody should just know how to do it. And then I see you shaking your head. And then I realize, I'm like, no, this is what has to be done. So we're like, well, we'll just implement like this little bit of paperwork, and then we'll still be pretty relaxed and have whatever. And then the more and more we're there, we're like, we need to make a process for this. We need to write this down. If it didn't happen, or if you didn't write it down, it didn't happen. And boy, have we learned that. Holy moly. But like I had to stress to everybody, I don't tell you the hours that you have to hit to nitpick you. I say that to hold you accountable and for you to know what success looks like in
Mm.
in the job
Ah,
that you're doing.
that's fucking brilliant right there.
Yes.
I yes, it gives them a metric in which to measure themselves by. Sorry, dog.
Absolutely.
Get that.
I had a guy, Jared,
Hmm.
for 3 years, we've been doing the same product. Every 4 months, we get an order for it. And we were at, I don't know, 27 hours to 28 hours to do the whole entire process. He came in there. I said, "These are the hours we got." Dude, the guy knocked it out in 17 hours because he just knew what to do. He got in there, he got it done. And like that helps him feel good about it. All right, pat on my back. I got that done when it took everybody else this much longer. So implementing those processes it was hard at first. And, and it's also hard when you have to talk to them, be like, hey, where are you at with hours? I hate, and I mean, actually, I don't love any of it yet, but I have to go to Dylan. I'm like, hey, where are we at with hours with this? Where are we at with hours with this? Because I want to, that's me helping him say, okay, because I give Dylan full autonomy for the shop. Like he's completely transformed my shop. He's gotten, we threw 3/4 of the stuff in the shop that we had out. We sold the rest of it. We bought other stuff that was more efficient. And now there's nothing in my shop. And it's great because we have tables, we have workbenches, and we have a couple tools, and we have toolboxes, and we're ready to go. We didn't have all the Kevin projects all over the place, up on top of the pallet racks and everything like that. I bought a sea container. I just put them in the sea container for myself.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna say like I'm that great. Like I got rid of them. I got rid of some of them.
Yeah.
It's funny because so we went to go see Jocko Willink for one of his talks maybe 8 months ago, and he said something that completely transformed my thinking of and it was in a 2-hour long conversation. He just talks to you. It was disconnect is a superpower. And if you're able to disconnect from what what you want versus what the business needs, it is so hard to do that, especially when your entire business was built on, hey, I want this. I've got the money for it. Let's go buy it. And I can justify it as a business expense. Or, I joked before the reason why I went into business is because I have a tool addiction. So I can just buy all the tools I want. Well, take a step back and say, all right, I really want this. Perfect example is I bought a year and a half ago. I bought a 40-foot, almost brand new. It was like a year old, 40-foot deck over gooseneck trailer. Thing was badass. I wanted one forever. We need it for a job. I went out and I dropped the money on it because I wanted it. I've used it 4, maybe 5 times in a year and a half. And, a few months ago, I got real with myself. I'm like, this is not what our business needs. I can get 15 grand for this thing. Would I go buy this again for 15 grand? No, I wouldn't. So I sold it. And that's happened so much with things that is, even stuff we have for sale now. I had to disconnect myself from the things that needed to happen. So I forget what tangent I was going off on that, but being able.
Yeah, that's okay because I do want to stay there for a second, because what you're really saying is you have to do what the business needs, not what your ego wants. And when you see these businesses, so I have this thing, revenue per square foot. I'm a fucking monster about revenue per square foot, because people buy these locations or these buildings because they want more space, and instead they need to do exactly what you're talking about. right? It's not about what they want, it's about what the business needs. People buy tools, people buy vehicles every, once or twice a year. They spend all of this money, and it's not what the business needs. It's about what they want, and it's about their financial ego and their status, because what they want is they want to be able to walk across the street and feel sexy about how their business looks to them, instead of the operation, the processes, the team, the value of the people, the profits that they're operating with. Instead, it's like a fucking Instagram filter, right? They want all of this sexy hanging around. And so how you said that happened 8 months ago. How much do you still struggle with that?
Every day. Oh my gosh, Facebook Marketplace? You kidding me?
Dude, that place is a fucking nightmare.
I
It's like you
know.
jump on there and you're like, dude, you can get that much for that? We've been at this for 7 years now. And it's like, do we still have some of the equipment that we had when we started?
Yeah.
It's easy to go out and buy brand new shit, and then you buy it and it just fucking sit. We bought a tubing bender from Rogue Fab. Badass tubing bender. We've used it once.
Are we living the same life? I bought
I
a
think so.
JD. I bought a JD Square Model 54, hydraulic, everything like that. I bought it like used. Like the guy built 2 or 3 race car chassis with it, and then sold it to me. I bought it. I was like, I needed it for this one job, and we used it for this one job. And man, it sat in a sea container. Then we moved it into the shop, and now it sits in the shop and collects dust because we just don't use it. And will we grow into it? Yes. It's definitely something that it's pretty easy to use, but it's just for now, really it's our drawing capabilities to be able to figure out like the radius and how much you need to do with it. It's not that hard to do it. But yeah, I'm on the same page with you with that, man.
I mean, we bought like the full die kit, for all the DOMs, all the schedules of pipe. The only thing we've ever used it for is for 12-inch returns on ADA compliant grab rails. It's a fucking $2,000 piece of equipment that we could have built those with. We could have bought 90s, from McMaster Car or something
King
like
metals
that.
for $7.
Yeah. It's ridiculous. The kind of shit that, you're like, oh, we could use this. This is what we could do with it. And then you never actually pursue the work with it. You're going to do the things that already make you money.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, well, we could do this. We got out of off-road completely. We used to do a bunch of off-road shit. You were talking about having projects eating up space in your shop. We were in like an 1,100 square foot shop when we started. I had a rock crawler parked in there for a year.
It was his.
It was mine. Yeah. It made us zero money and just occupied space.
I had I bought a 70 Chevelle, and I had it sitting in the middle bay, which is like our middle bay is the one that's like always open. I had that sitting there for like 3 months, man. It just collected dust. And I'm like, well, I refused to put it away in storage unless it was running and driving. And it sat there it might have been more than 3 months. It might have been like 4 months. And but yeah, like everybody worked around it. Nobody could put things on top of it. And it just sat there. And it was the Kevin show with his helpers for a long time.
Yeah.
And then now it's, I realize like I just need to grow into what we want to grow into. I need to put myself out of like aside and say, is this truly what the business needs? And it's, even some of we sold that trailer, we're buying other things that even the stuff that I don't even think we really need, but my foreman Dylan really thinks that they would be a help in the shop. I'm putting my ego aside of, no, you know what? I'd rather spend a couple $100 on this, but you know what? I think it is valuable to, if I want him to own this shop like I want him to own it, I need to buy him the things that he wants for the shop. And even though I don't see the return on investment of it, maybe it's not going to have the return on investment that I see, but it will for him. You know what I mean?
How do you filter out what he wants and what the shop needs?
I asked him. I said, "How's this going to make us money? How's this going to be, what's the how do I phrase it to him? Like, I say, okay, tell me why we need to spend this much money and how we're going to make that money back.
Mm.
And a lot of times he's like, well, it kind of won't, like he wants a Burr King belt
Oh,
sander.
those things are like $4,000.
Yeah, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000. I'm like, all right, cool. I said, help me understand how that's going to pay for it. We have a belt sander. It's a piece of junk. I got it out of the scrapyard, put a new motor on the thing. The thing bogs down. It is what it is, but it's a belt sander. I said, help me understand why we need to spend $3,000 on a new belt sander. And, we both work through that and understand, and I don't say that to be kind of a jerk to him, be like, oh, well, explain to me why it's good. No, I like, maybe he does have a really good point that it will save us time.
Yeah. That's a
Um,
strategic conversation,
Yeah.
not an authoritative conversation.
Sure,
Mhm.
absolutely. And I think that's how all of our almost all of our conversations are, is because I want Dylan to have the buy-in, and I want him to run this shop like it's his, because really because I wanted him to run it like it's his,
Mhm.
because he's got the skill, he's got the ability, and he's a really valuable person. He's a
Mhm.
valuable team member. He's a valuable foreman. He's a valuable friend,
Mhm.
and I want to respect that in him. And I wanted to build. Our tagline is "Not your ordinary welding company," and I want to have a company that's not your ordinary welding company. I want to,
Mhm.
people aren't coming in late. The culture is you show up 10, 15 minutes ahead of time. Everybody knows each other. Everybody's friendly to each other. Everybody relatively gets along. And, that's the kind of company that I want to own. So I need to figure out how to facilitate that.
Well, I think that it's brilliant that you allow him to take ownership of the shop. And like you said, it's his shop. You're not the one out there every day dealing with the shit, dealing with the people in the
Mhm.
shop, dealing with the tools and equipment. You empower him to do things the way that are going to be the most effective for the company, right? And that's ultimately by giving him that freedom, you're allowing him to take care of your company.
Mhm.
And we've done that with Sam, who's our shop steward. We gave her a credit card. We're like, here, this has an $8,000 limit on it. If it's anything over $1,000, we have to have a conversation about it. But buy what you need. I'm not going to go out there and nitpick what fucking grinding wheels you're using. Get the shit that you guys want to use. We support that all day, and just that little bit of empowerment really gives people the ability to shine.
Mhm.
And I appreciate your thought process on that, of like, hey, it's your shop. Take care
Well,
of it as you see fit.
it's not even just Dylan, it's everybody.
Mhm.
Like, okay, you like this kind of cutoff wheel. Tell me why you like it. We'll buy it and we'll try it out. If you want to use it, cool. We'll buy it for you. Oh, you think that we should do it this way? All right, tell me why you think. I do. I'm real specific with Dylan because he's my right hand man, but I do that with everybody. I help them work through it, help them to you know come up with your own explanations, or your own the answers to your own problems. I say I do it a lot, but I think I need to do it more. Of Don't come to me with the problem unless you've got two solutions. And because I want to hear your thought process of how to fix that. I want you to think on your own one step ahead before you come to me and make me your easy button to fix it. I want you to figure out, you know, and I say
Do,
two.
do you do you listen to our podcast like all the time? Because it's fucking funny that all this shit
Yeah.
that Josh says, it's literally coming out of your mouth verbatim. So
Well, it's funny because I think I only started to listen to your podcast maybe about 6 months ago. And then I kind of dropped off a little bit because I stopped listening to things during the day, and then I kind of tuned back in right after Fab Tech, actually. But yeah, it's funny because everything that you guys talk about is like the dialogue that goes on in my head, but it's just like, oh my gosh, they're just talking about what's going on in my head. This is amazing, you know. for not being a welding podcast, it's pretty great.
Oh, I fucking love that.
You know, so I'm going to share two short stories because you brought up Jocko, and back in 2000, probably 14 or 15, I attended their very first muster.
Nice.
001 in San Diego. And it's something I will forever be proud of as being a plank owner for Echelon Front. And he is the one that taught me about the easy button. And the second story is I could probably list out 6 of the most significant pivoting moments in my business. And introducing the idea of the easy button and the solution to my team was one of them. And I got back from that conference because we had team meetings every week. And by this point, I think I had 10 or 12 people on my team. So everyone's in there. And I explained to them this easy button theory. And it was great. And it was a testament to the culture that we had. They laughed. They literally laughed when I told them that I was being the easy button for them, and they recognized it. But I also introduced the concept. I said, so moving forward, anytime you bring me a problem, you have to bring me at least one solution, period. And that had, I mean, such a significant impact on how my business operated, because what I learned is they weren't relying on me for the answer. I was not empowering them to think. I was enabling them to rely on me for the answer, because it was simple, because it was easy. And in the few, 2-3 years following that implementation, I had one conversation, and it was one of my young guys. He was like 20, and he called. He said, "Hey, boss, you going to be at the office?" I said, "Yeah, I'll be here." So he comes in. He walks into my office, and he says, "You're going to be mad at me." And I said, "Okay." He said, "I have a problem and I have no solution." And I laughed, but the fact that he took that so seriously, I mean, that he was ready. He was prepared to take an ass chewing because he didn't know what to do. Now, this kid had been in the HVAC industry for like 9 months. He didn't have the experience to have every solution. But it wasn't about solving the problem. It was about embracing the culture and the concept of, I need to have a solution. And it's one, man. So it was one of the greatest, again, significant moments, pivoting moments in my company when I stopped being the easy button. Here's the last part, because this is what it did encourage. And Robbie always comes to mind when I think about this. See, if they were in a tight spot and they would call me, Robbie would call me. Let's say he was on the rooftop of a hospital working on an 80-ton unit. And he would say, "Hey, I need an easy button." I'm like, "What's up?" "Hey, I've got this, this, and this." I'm like, "Check this and this." He's like, "Okay, bye." Right. But I understood that I didn't need to manage him in that situation, because he didn't have any of the resources, including time, for us to have a conversation about, well, tell me what you think we should do. Right. There are situations that you have to manage and balance that. And when they prefaced, and when he would say, "I need an easy button," I knew he wasn't fucking around about it. Right. But
I think, Josh, I think that the part we need to understand about that is that you're a resource, not a solution. Right. And I think once you look at it in that lens of like, yes, I can help, I'm not going to fucking do it for you. Right. And I think that's, as business owners, that's the hardest hurdle for us to jump over. Cause I mean, we all started off doing the fucking job. Yeah. Right. And then now all of a sudden you're trying to lead these other people to do the job that you did, and they're not going to do it as well as you did it, and that's, it's so easy for us to jump in there and go, "No, it's stupid. This is how it's done." That gets nobody anywhere, you know.
You can accomplish the same thing and be like, explain to me what you did here.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
What was
Well,
your thought process with this?
right. Well, and it's one of the reasons, that I'm an advocate for the walk me through your plan process. Back to the system that you have, the 1 to 4, everything. You can still take that information because the walk me through your plan, and the walk me through your plan is not about always hand holding or micromanaging the process, but it's about teaching people how to look through the project.
Mm,
And if I give them the steps and you just tell them, say, hey, look over this project, look through the steps, come back to me in 5 minutes and walk me through your plan. I want to know the how, right? Because you've given them all the what, you've given them the when, you've given them the why. It's their job to develop the how.
mhm.
And when they bring that back to you, now your job is to bridge the holes in their plan. And that it's one of the coolest things that happens is you get to see how they think, and they get to share their perspective with you. Matt and I were joking about this a couple weeks ago because he can draw something and hand it to somebody else, and they see something completely fucking different. I mean, they don't even see the same thing. It's like the old lady and the hot girl, the drunk photo you can turn
Yeah.
upside down and it changes. Like it's that different. So when you encourage the communication and the conversations through the system implementation that you have, it builds trust, it builds transparency, it builds perspective, and that you're also building them to be able to, again, see through the project and make better decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. That's huge on our part. I had an input on that, and I completely just lost it
That's
when you
that's
said
because
the
when
hot
I
girl
start
and the
talking, I don't
the
stop.
the flip over thing. I was like, "Oh, I
The-
remember that." Gone. I promise I had some valuable input for that, but it's not here anymore.
No, that's how do you balance yourself from micromanaging people then through the processes as opposed to empowering them through the processes?
That's a constant struggle. Um, I find myself saying a lot, I don't mean to say this to micromanage you."
I hear
If
those. I hear those
if it
words
were
comes
me,
out of. Yeah, I hear those words come out of Matt's mouth almost every day. Hey, not to micromanage you, but
You know, yeah, so,
oh, I love it.
sometimes
So good.
I even flip it back onto me. Back to the work order thing. The work order thing is not only to let them know what's in my head and what's in the bid for time and material and expectations, it's also for me to learn and get better at bidding. So sometimes I try to take it off, when I'm harping on somebody a couple times for the same thing, I feel it, I feel like I my I tense up. I'm like, man, I gotta talk to him about this again. So I try to relieve it by putting the problem on me. Like I'm like, all right, help me understand where you're coming from with this. Um, or I need you to fill out these. One big thing was we recently we started to require people to request time off. So we do 4 10-hour days, Monday through Thursday, 10 hours a day. In the summertime, it's, plan to work on Friday. And if you don't, it's just a bonus. And it got to the point where we hired a guy. He was like, he would, this comes back to the processes. If it's not written down, it didn't happen. When we hired him, we're like, hey, you're going to be the road guy. You're going to have to work long hours, and most likely you're going to have to work Fridays. But our work week is Monday through Thursday. If you really need off on a Friday, you need to tell us and let us know. Well, there was a lot of times where he couldn't do overtime. He's like, "Hey man, it's 5:30. I got to go," or "I have to leave. It's 5:15. I have to leave." I'm like, "Like why?" He's like, "Well, it's 10 hours." I'm like, Okay, well, I need you to come in Friday because this job went sideways. You need to fix it. Well, I have a doctor's appointment on Friday. Well, you didn't let me know. Dude, you have to let me know. So we had to implement a vacation or time off that even if you need off on a Friday, you need to
Mm.
to request it. Even though we technically have off on Fridays, we're a small company. When you're working 4 days in a week in a world that works five, it gets complicated. So we had to, and so also people would say it. They would say, I need this time off. All right, no problem. It's next month. Nobody ever put that on the calendar. We hired a guy. He's like, I have off on this whole week. I can't work. Cool, no problem. Nobody ever put it on the calendar. I have him scheduled out all next week, working with other people in conjunction with them, so that his stuff is done, so they can work and this and that. He's like, "Oh, well, I'm not here next week." I'm like, "What do you mean you're not here next week?" He's like, "Yeah, I told you when you hired me on that I have off this next week." Nobody ever put it on the schedule. So now, we have to request. So implementing the time off request was it felt very quote unquote corporate to me, but I had to reassure to everybody, look, we're not micromanaging you, and we're not like trying to put restraints on you or constraints on you, because this is why it happened. He requested off. I didn't put it on the calendar. Dylan didn't know about it. Melissa didn't put it on the calendar. It's our problem. So in order to make this run more smoothly and to not have these awkward, like, well, I told you, well, I didn't remember you telling me, blah, 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 just write it out. Write it out. Say why you need off. Not that it really matters. We actually have a need off or would like off. So it's like, all right, well, my girlfriend wants me to go to a picnic and I'd like to go. Well, he would like to go. So, that's kind of a,
How often they actually use that "would like to" box though?
actually they do. They do.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah, yeah, they do. They're pretty honest about it. They're like, "Hey, like I would really like to go with my friends to this thing on this Friday. Like, I know it's a month away." And I think they've always gotten off every time they even said they would like it. But I brought it back to like, "Hey, this isn't to constrain you. This is so we're held accountable, because on that paper, whoever signs off on approving that is responsible for putting it on the calendar. That way, if it falls through the cracks, it's on that person." So that was one of the things where, it was a tough rub, because we were in the middle of like, so like the one guy had to keep taking off a lot, and it was a hard rub for everybody in the shop, because we were busy, we needed him, and then things fell through the cracks. So that's kind of the way I try to not micromanage but empower them, because is by explaining to them the why behind what we do, rather than just you know you need to do this and this is how it has to be done.
So you're talking, what you're describing is getting buy-in. And when you're looking at systematic operations and implementations, there's two boxes that you have to check to get buy-in for implementation. And what you're discussing is the first one, is why. They need to know why it exists. The second box is they need to know how it benefits them.
Mm.
And if you can answer those two questions, you can check those two boxes, you now have buy-in. And
That's a
because
good point. It's a really good point.
because if it's to benefit the company, they don't give a shit. It's your company, not theirs.
Exactly.
I don't care what your fucking culture is. Okay. Because the moment that you start imposing operating systems on them to strictly benefit the company, you now have a corporate feel.
Mm. Yeah.
So to maintain the culture, they need to know why it exists and how it benefits them.
Well, and I think that's so huge with this younger generation. They're not motivated by money. They're not motivated by bonuses and shit like that. It's time off. This younger generation really gives a fuck about their time off. And whether that's paid or not, that's a whole other story. But they have life experiences that they want to go engage in, and you have to be able to provide that for them. And we've run into that with guys before where it's like, hey, we gave everybody a heads up, like, hey, we got a lot of shit firing off all at the same time. Keep your schedules open. We got to go. Well, like, you're probably going to be working 6 10s. And then I'm like, hey, I'm going to need you here on this project on Saturday. I'm not going to be there. What? I asked you to keep your schedule. And the guy ended up quitting over it. He was like, because we pulled his bonus from him afterwards, and like, hey, dude, you don't come through, well, then we're going to have to, we're going to have to pull your bonus from you. Oh, well, then I'll go find somewhere else. But it was all about the time off. And I think you having this very systematized way of being like, hey, we'll give you the time off, but we got to be able to schedule around it. That's huge. Being, it's like, hey, it's not on the paper. It was on the paper. It didn't fucking happen. So,
yep.
And that's, we actually recently just started doing that ourselves. We have a request off form for the guys. And, no matter how busy we are, we try to work around giving people time off. And,
sure.
I would never once have we really pushed back on people, but, you can go do all this stuff for other people, but just don't expect it on the other end. It's really easy to get offended when they won't come in on a Saturday. You're like, dude, what the fuck? Like, you're 25 years old. Why do you not want overtime right now? Like, this is the time when you should be working 18 hours a day, 7 days a week,
I used to do this all the time. Come on.
Back in my day.
Yeah, exactly. It's easy to get caught up in the back in my day shit.
Yeah.
Kevin, I know we've got a time limit today, so closing thoughts from you before we move to the wrap up.
So I think I really, it's more of appreciation for you guys. It's when you said, do you guys listen to my, like, are you like copying our podcast? It's funny because I feel like I get like anytime I listen to you guys, I get a lot of value out of what you guys talk about. For not being a welding podcast, you guys have some really good stuff on that. No, but seriously, like, I love the business side of this as much as I do the welding side. Hence my podcast. But I really, both your guys' input is super valuable, and I really appreciate how you guys aren't like, you are the tradesman experience podcast. Your value, we joke of that, about the welding podcasting, but it spans so great over so many different, not only trades, but it's just business in general. Like the advice that you and advice and experience that you guys have, it spans over such a wide array of things. Whereas mine's a little bit more narrowed down to the welding side of things. I get a lot out of you guys, and I appreciate all that you guys do.
Well, I greatly appreciate that, man.
Yeah, man.
That means a lot. Yeah.
I wasn't sure Nate's ego could get any bigger, but I'm pretty sure after that, it's up there.
I'm about ready to float out of here.
Not you, Nate.
I mean, I feel my chest pumping out just a little bit. Dude, I mean, we could continue.
I feel like we're so short on this, man. We could go for like we have to do a couple more episodes on this because I feel like I agree. We just started rolling. We just started getting into it.
I agree, and there's so many things to unpack, and it's a privilege for me when I meet someone that I get to spend time with, and they exceed my expectation. And because I'm not the easiest person to give a shit about what you think or care or do, it's like, I'm just like, I don't fucking care. Get out of my way. But man, getting to hang out with you in Chicago, getting to, to have this conversation, like, God damn. I mean, we could have a podcast together and we could do this shit every week and it would just be fucking fire. So
well, I mean, and to kind of double down on that, dude, that that little fucking bar at the conference center that we basically lived at for 2 or 3 days, the time we got to spend with you sitting there chopping it up, talking business, talking shop, talking pricing, leadership, all that stuff. Out of all the shit that I saw while I was there, that was the most valuable time that I spent. Was sitting around having beers, talking shop. And it was really good to get your input on it, because we are essentially in the same market. We do a lot of custom ornamental, as well as structural steel, but to be able to fire stuff back and forth, find out what people's markups on material are, and like there was so much valuable information there, and I think that you're one of those trendsetters for the industry, and I think that you're
Thank
really putting yourself out there, and you're really doing what you can to do this the best way possible, and I appreciate that.
I just want to share it with like, I feel like I'm the most um uh, I'm the luckiest person because I get to take the experience from everybody else. Like people, they look at the podcast as like this this thing. You know what I mean? It's kind of a deal. It's not a deal. It's me just wanting to BS with my friends, and I get to rob the information that's in their head for free. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So, the only difference is I buy a microphone, a headset, and I pay for Zoom, and I hit record so everybody else can hear it too. You know,
Yeah.
so it's really I don't know. I feel like it's I don't know. It's I'm glad it helps other people. It's kind of surreal to have people reach out to me and say, I started my business because I've been listening to you. I'm like, what? Me?
Mhm.
Like, I just chop it up with other guys and we complain about our welding business together. You know what I mean? Like, why do you like? I tell you all the bad stuff that happens in our business, and then you go out and you want to join the team of dealing with all this crap. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
What a great way to put that.
Yeah.
Your podcast is Welding Business Owners Podcast. Where else can people find you?
Instagram. You can find me JMW Fabrication. The podcast is Welding Business Owners Podcast on Instagram. I'm really terrible with social media. You can check out Fabricator Olympics on Instagram and fabricatorolympics.com. I think that's it. Yeah, I'm pretty terrible with all that stuff, but yeah, reach out, man. I appreciate you guys. I appreciate all the, I'm always up for talking to people. If they've got specific questions that they want me to ask somebody or bring up topics. I just did something on like a 3-hour long podcast about how to price work, because that seems like that's one of the biggest the biggest questions I get. So that's coming out soon, and yeah, that's where I'm at.
Awesome. Nate, what do you think,
Dude,
brother?
hey man, it was such a pleasure being able to sit down with you, get you on here. I'm excited to come on your podcast next week, and
Like, yeah.
let the tables turn a little bit, and actually talk to somebody that is a welding podcast. So
I tell you what, if there's one person on this planet that gets put through the strainer every week, it's Mr. Nate Newton. Let me tell you, because he sits at the other end of this podcast table an hour to 2 hours before we record, and he gets full benefit, as I like to say.
I get 2 hours of coaching for free every week.
So true. Kevin, dude, thank you so much, man, for being on here. It's a true privilege.
Thank you guys. I really appreciate you.
Go check him out. You can find Nate on Instagram at Nate Newton 87. I am on Instagram at The Tradesman Experience. Email is thetradesmanexperience@gmail.com. Website's thetradesmanexperience.com. And the YouTube channel is The Tradesman Experience. Thank you so much for spending this time with us. Get out there, get shit done. Be proud to be a tradesman. See ya.